the Darwara Singh College of Education, Parinita, Moga College of Education, Moga, Miss Jaskiran Kaur, Principal, Babega College of Education, Moga. I also extend my welcome to our today's resource person, Dr. Vijay Chechi ji, and dear participants. I welcome you all. Now I invite Dr. Khushwant Kaur, Assistant Professor, Sant Dwara Singh College of Education for Women, for present the report of the previous day. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Myself, Dr. Khushwant Kaur, Assistant Professor, STS College of Education for Women, Lopo. Good afternoon to all present. It's a great pleasure for me to present the report of fourth day of FDP organized by ST College Methodology in collaboration with GGD, SD College Haryana, Shri Guru Har Rai Sahib College for Women, Chabbewal, Moga College of Education for Girls, Moga, Babeke College of Education, Dadar, and SDS College of Education for Women, Lopo. I congratulate to all organizations for their great efforts. Now I read the report of fourth day. The fourth day of the FDP commenced with the Saraswati Bandhana to seek the blessings from the Almighty for the event. The event began with the introduction of theme of FDP by Mrs. Jyoti Bala, Head Department of Management, SD College, Hoshiarpur. Mrs. Manjeet Kaur, Head PG Department of Commerce, SD College, Hoshiarpur, briefed the report of day 3rd of FDP. After that, Mr. Nand Kishore, Principal, SD College, Hoshiarpur, introduced Dr. Ajay Pal Sharma, Assistant Professor, Central University, Haryana. Professor Dr. Sharma started his lecture on the topic how to prepare questionnaire with very practical and convenient approach. He explained the difference between the data and information with various examples. Dr. Sharma explained that it is very essential to define the research program before start of collection of data. Dr. Sharma, in his address, gave the overview of process of question designs in detail. He explained principles of questionnaire designs and questionnaire designing process. He also discussed questionnaire evaluation techniques, that is, reliability and validity, and told how can we test reliability and validity with various techniques. In last, various secondary sources to collect data were discussed in detail. After this, vote of thanks was delivered by Dr. Sachin Kumar from PG Department of Commerce, SD College, Hoshiarpur, on behalf of worthy managing committees, honorable principals, and faculty of organizing colleges. He extended a heartfelt thanks to esteemed speaker Dr. Ajay Pal Sharma and to all the participants. The event ended with the national anthem. Thanks to all. Now it's over to Jyoti ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to invite Dr. Tripta Parmar, a respected principal of Sant Darwara Singh College of Education for Women Lopo, for the formal welcome and introduction for our today's resource person. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mrs. Jyoti. A very good afternoon to all of you. Uh, First of all, I extend my thanks to the STS College management, principal, and faculty to provide me such a prestigious platform to address the uh, meeting to the congregation of the intellectuals. I, Dr. Tripta Parmar, Principal Santarbara Singh College of Education for Women Lopo, feel myself privileged to welcome and introduce today's resource person, Dr. Vijay Kumar Chechi, Professor and HOD, Lovely Professional University, Jalandhar. On behalf of the management and faculty of SC College Hoshiarpur and managements and faculties of the collaborating colleges, I extend a warm welcome to Dr. Vijay Kumar Chechi. He is presently serving as professor and head of the Department of Education, Lovely Professional University, Fagwara. He has 20 years of experience in the field of teacher education. His researches are focused in the areas like emotional intelligence, self-regulated learning, socially disadvantaged groups, bullying, teacher self-efficacy, effectiveness, academic monitoring, and motivation. He has taught courses like educational research and statistics, measurement and evaluation, educational technology, pedagogy of social sciences, and educational management and application of SPSS. He has cited more than 77 doctoral theses. He has published 105 research papers in journals and books and has presented 35 papers in national and international conferences and seminars. He has remained in administrative positions He has remained in the administrative positions and has been instrumental in successfully designing the curriculum, organizing placements, examinations, academic counseling, accreditation, inspections, and lab developments. He has organized 7 conferences or seminars. He has conducted workshops on SPSS application, use of Excel in statistics, construction and standardization, constructivist-based learning, and NEP 2020. He has also acted as resource person to various faculty development programs. Today, he will be deliberating on interpretation and analysis of data. Thank you so much, and I wish you all a happy journey of learning together. Over to Mrs. Jyoti.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Uh, I would also like to welcome Dr. Girdharilal Sharma, Principal, Sion College, Abohar. Welcome, sir. Now I request and invite Dr. Vijay Chechi. Sir, kindly share your expert knowledge with our participants. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Jyoti ma'am, and thank you to all the principals of this 7-day FTP program, this program on research methodology for the wide audience throughout the country for this workshop. Today's session that I am going to present is on the analysis of data and its interpretation. So taking not much time to start with the presentation, I am sharing my screen. I think my screen has started, and
visible, sir.
thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay, so this data analysis and interpretation. Basically, this whenever we talk about the data, it is basically the one of the important uh, stage that come to the mind of the researcher, that when he has been able to collect the data, how he is going to analyze that data. Now, when we start the research journey from that stage to the stage when we are going to write the report, this is the main stage which is going to give the credible information about the research that we have been able to conduct at our MEd level, or it is MPhil level, or it is a PhD level. So basically, this stage is very important. And if we talk about in the sense that how do we analyze the data, that is very comprehensive discussion, because depending upon the data that we are going to analyze, and dependence or research questions that we have with. Now, those things are very important. And based on those research questions and research objectives, the type of analysis that we are going to undertake is the main task that researcher has to understand and he has to apply on his data. So with this objective, the present session is going to help us to understand what are the different analytical techniques that can be possible for different types of data. Here I will be focusing on more on the quantitative part because that is a very vast analysis techniques which are going to be covered in the research journey of a researcher. And also once the methodology, either it is Excel or it is SPSS or it is the manual calculations that an individual does, how those results are to be interpreted in the understanding of the research questions. So these are the two learning outcome of the session that we want to go with. Now, firstly, taking the analysis. Now, analysis means that when we are going to order our data. Now, this is the first stage of our collection of the data. That when we have collected the data, either of any population, either from the books or it is a questionnaire or interview. The first and foremost thing that a researcher need to do is ordering. Then the second thing he is going to do is the manipulation. The manipulations in the terms of that of collecting the data. There are sometimes there are missing items, sometimes there are the outliers in the data. So that comes out to be in terms of manipulation. And then we try to summarize the data in order to obtain some answers to the questions that we have started our journey with. So this is a process. Kindly mute yourself, ma'am. Is the process of ordering, manipulating, and summarizing the data in order to understand the research questions that we have started with. Similarly, the interpretation is the art, that is the further technique. After the analysis, we are able to go with this thing, that how or what type of results that have been coming through the help of the analysis that we have applied. So what type of inferences can be drawn from that result? Whether they are going to give some conclusions, we are able to going to come up with some conclusions or not. That is the again very important pertinent question for the researcher. So this interpretation is also very important. We apply the technique and based on that we simply state whether it is coming significant or not. That is not the interpretation. We need to interpret the result in the terms of that how it is going to come up in terms of some conclusions for the future studies, how it is going to give us the direction for the future studies that we are going to undertake in for our future researchers. Now, this is the again another point of our understanding of this session, that how to interpret. So now, starting with, when we talk about the interpretation and analysis, the first and foremost thing is the application of the statistics. Because it is all, when we are having the data, we are going to apply some sort of statistics for that. Either it is qualitative data or it is a quantitative data. In qualitative data, we will be minimally using the statistics, but in the quantitative data, a lot of statistics, and we will be trying to understand the meanings that are underlying the facts and figures that are coming up in our data. So statistics is helping us to understand and translate what numbers are telling us from the data that is with us. It is the art where we are trying to describe the phenomena, we are trying to analyze, we are interpreting, and we are trying to possibly generate some kind of conclusions for the total population. So that is the art of the statistics. Now, basically, when we talk of statistics, the statistics is a very wide branch. Now, in statistics, generally, when we divide, when we categorize it, it is categorized in terms of, when I said that we are going to use certain kind of statistics for different kind of data, that is either you can have the qualitative data or you can have the quantitative data. So when we are using some kind of qualitative data, more or less we are going to work with the descriptive statistics. And that descriptive statistics will be helping us to find out some kind of frequencies, some kind of central tendencies, some kind of dispersions, and we will be trying to make out from that. So basically, when we describe or understand statistics, we describe it in terms of its two categories with the simple categorization, that is descriptive statistics and the inferential statistics. Now, descriptive statistics is which help us to give a description to the population or the sample that we are going to use in our study. Now, similarly, the inferential statistics is a statistic that is going to help us to infer some kind of analysis, infer some kind of conclusion from the data to address our research question. Now, they may be coming up in terms of some kind of differential analysis, some kind of model testing analysis, some type of correlational analysis, or some kind of predictive analysis. So basically, the descriptive statistics has some different measures of statistics which are going to be used. Similarly, the inferential statistics are also going to have different statistical techniques that are going to be used. Now, if we talk about the descriptive statistics, the first and foremost is the frequencies. We, in the qualitative research, we are using the frequencies more often into the literature. That is the most time being used, and that is helped by the percentage analysis in order to describe the phenomena, the event that is occurring in the situation. Similarly, the second statistics of descriptive description is the central tendency. We generally talk about mean, median, mode. We try to identify the mean, that is the average of all the items that are there in the data. Similarly, we have the median, which is the central value of the distribution that we try to understand that which figure is coming up in the center. That is the way of again some type of understanding on some kind of data. We apply the mean, and similarly on some we apply the median. The third kind of data that is coming up and we help to get in the center tendency is the mode, which is the frequently occurring value in the distribution. That is the measure of central tendency or the mean, median, and mode. The second type of descriptive statistics that we try to understand is dispersion. Now, dispersion is again starts with that what type of variation is there in the data. Now, just like the center tendency tells us that what is the score on which we can say the most of the data that is there in the with a researcher, the what value can be representative for all of them, either as a mean, median, or mode. So we try to average or find which is frequently occurring or which is coming up in the center. We take that value as the central tendency. Similarly, the variation is that what amount of variety is there in the scores. So for that, there are different values. One is range, which is taking up the concept minimum value and what is the maximum value. When we talk of homogeneity of the population, the variation dispersion is very important. This is telling us that how much is the variation is going on in terms of maximum minus minimum score. Kindly mute yourself.
Parminder Chima ji, please. Yes.
Measure of dispersion is the standard deviation. Or standard deviation is being used in more often in almost all the researches as a stable measure, which help us to understand which help us to understand the variety in terms of that how much the deviation of the scores can go from the central figure or the central score that we have took as the central tendency, either as a mean or as a median. The third type of technique that is descriptively identifying what is relationship is there in the data. between the variables that is coming up as a positive correlation or as a negative correlation. Similarly, we try to identify the distribution in terms of deciles, quartiles, what quarter, how much the items are coming up in different quarters, what type of the deviation is coming up in terms of quartile deviation. Then the another major point is from location point of view is the consideration of the distribution in terms of the its pattern, that is the normality. So it is being measured in terms of the symmetry and the heightedness. So symmetrically, whether skewness is coming up or not is the another way of describing data, that we try to understand that there shall be a zero skewness in the data. Only then we will be able to make some kind of conclusions for the population. Similarly is the kurtosis. That is also helping us that what type of peakedness is there in the data. If there is more peakedness in the data than the desired, then again is going to be some kind of problem with respect to the situations that we want to describe. So it is very important that descriptive statistics are always helpful to go beyond descriptives. Now, this descriptive statistics help us to know whether we are going to take the things to the conclusions for the population, or we are going to just make conclusion for that sample or that the collected data only. So that distribution free function or the distribution prediction is based on these general features of descriptive statistics, either as a tendency, central tendency, dispersion, or normality. So we try to understand from that. Then the second type of statistics are the inferential statistics. The inferential statistics are again having some different type of techniques when we are going to make the research designs of our studies. We are talking about in terms of that the inferential studies, we try to find the relationship between the variables. So we try to apply the correlation as a technique. But when we are not going with the relationships, we go beyond that. We want to predict the things that we are trying to go with the regression as an analysis. So there is a bivariate correlation between the two variables. There can be a multiple correlation to find out the relationship between different variables. Then there is a partial kind of a relationship that where we are trying to find out between two, but excluding the another one. Similarly, we are having the predictions being taken into consideration in terms of regression approach, that one is predicting other or not, whether 2, 3 are predicting one or not, or whether one is predicting many of them or not. So that kind of things are there. The third kind of research designs that we try to use is the differences design. The difference designs are being used in terms of finding the subgroup. Now that is the first and foremost that we used on to analyze the differences is the t-test. Now that t-test is being used in order to make the things between understood level by finding the differences between two groups. Then we move to one-way ANOVA, that to find the differences between groups when they are more than two. Then similar one sample, when we have already a benchmark and we want to compare the population or compare the sample which with that benchmark, we apply one sample t-test. Then we have the another type of t-test when we are coming up with kind of a paired t-testing of the experimental situation, whether the pre-test to post-test there is some differences coming up or not. So then we are going to apply the paired t-test to find the differences come up and the post-test scores or not. So that is the paired t-test. Now these t-tests for single variable, one variable is going into further for one-way ANOVA. Similarly, the paired t-test is going for one-way repeated measure ANOVA when there is more number of testing for time. From t-test to post-test 1, post-test 2, post-test 3, post-test 4, and number of testing that you are time with respect to time you are making on an experiment. then you are going to apply one-way repeated measure ANOMA. See, then we are talking about the model testing design. You have some conceptual model which is having the relationships. There are some latent variables which are going to predict the other variables. So that type of designs also apply some kind of model testing, which apply again the regression analysis or the factor analysis or the confirmatory factor analysis, exploratory factor analysis, or cluster analysis. So we try to make the application of those analysis in order to understand the inferences to that. Now, this all inferential statistics is further based on some things that we talk about in terms of parametric statistics and the non-parametric statistics. The parametric statistics are the tests which I have just explained, that the parametric therein we have the population of following the normality procedure, and we are having zero skewness and zero kurtosis. Then in those situations we are having we can apply the parametric statistics. But where we the normality proposition of the data, therein we will not be applying the parametric statistics. Then we may have to move to the non-parametric statistics. So parametric statistics are the different statistics where we are able to generalize the findings for the population itself from the sample from which we have collected the data. So where parametric statistics are involved, we can employ the t-test, we can employ the Carl-Pearson correlation in order to find out the relationship. Then we can apply one-way and two-way ANOVA to find out the significant differences between the groups, and then regression analysis to predict. Similarly, factorial analysis to find that the different factors are there into one construct or not. Then cluster analysis is there in order to find whether the variables or the sub factors are coming into some kind of clusters or not. So these are some kind of the parametric statistical techniques wherein we can apply the normality procedures and they have been accepted. But in some cases wherein we are not able to have the things coming up into the normality situation, and our sample is not coming up normal with respect to the distribution that is existing in the population, so then we can say that our sample is it is not following the distribution that is existing in the population. So then those distribution free populations, or then those distribution free samples, there we will be applying the non-parametric statistics. And the some of the statistics that we use are the Kolmogorov Smirnov test, sign test, median test, then Spearman rank order correlation, then Kruskal-Wallis H test, then Mon-Whitney U test, then Wilcoxon match pair T test, Wilcoxon rank sum T test, and Chi-square. Now, out of these, the many are the, for example, Kruskal-Wallis H test is the when we fail the T test, we try to Kruskal-Wallis H test. Similarly, we can apply the Mann-Whitney T test, wherein the correlation Carl-Pearson fail, we try to apply the correlation. In some kinds of where we are only having the frequencies, therein we can apply the Wilcoxon match pair test, or wherein ranking or judges are there involved. So therein we apply the Wilcoxon rank sum test. Then the Chi-square test is being used in order to find out the differences that exist in terms of independence or of the variables in terms of cross pairing, cross tabulation, or in terms of whether the distribution is having some kind of differences or not. So in those kind of situation, we apply the Chi-square test of goodness or the Chi-square test of independence. There are different non-parametrics tests are available for the different situations. Now, either of the statistical analysis that we do, either it is for parametric statistics or it is for the non-parametric statistics, we need to follow some kind of process. This first and foremost of the process that we apply for the statistical analysis is that we need to put that into order. This is you have the questionnaire, you have the rating scale. Now that rating scale, you have scored them, and after that scoring, you are going to put that into the Excel sheet. Now that Excel sheet is going to be taking, either you are going to put that data on the basis of each item, or you are going to put the scores of the total of for each individual. So that depends upon you in order to see whether you want to understand the dimension wise results or not. So then again, for example, I had started with my lecture with the two words that in the data there comes some kinds of outliers, and there sometimes comes the non-filled items, no responses given by the individuals. So how to go with that? So that is the statistical procedure wherein we can take up the average value of the items in for those all missing items that the individuals has given as blank. So in some cases, if there is a 20 item questionnaire, if one is having the missing answer, so you can use this process. But if the somebody has not filled 10 items out of 20, so you can simply make that form outside from your data. That is cannot be counted into the data because it is not unfilled form. It is not filled form, it is the unfilled form, and you can easily come to the conclusion that the individual has not given his 100% in order to fill in the responses of the questionnaire. This is the one aspect. The missing values you can able to generate with the help of SPSS, that you can fill in those values with the either using the mid value of the rating scale, or depending upon the procedures of the statistical data, on the SPSS you have the chance to go with the filling of the data automatically. Now the second step after putting up that into the array or that into the tabulation, then you establish categories. You try to identify your variables into some kind of nominal or the ordinal type of data or interval type of data, and based on that you try to make the categories. Whether you want the data into categorical form into for some variable, or you want it as the ratio variable. So that is again the type of the understanding the researcher must have in order to make that what his research questions are asking him, what type of data he want to make, what type of analysis he want to make. So if the analysis is going to be made in terms of categories, you need to make your data or make your interpretation of the data in terms of the categories. But if it is coming up in terms of relationships or in terms of some kind of inference is drawn, then you can go along with the ratio type of scores values of the each of the variable that you have used in your data. Then further, the percentage is the another things that we try to understand, that how much percentages is there for different set of values. So that also helps us to understand is whether the distribution is coming up proper or not, or whether the categories are percentage wise coming up correctly or not. So that is again the one of the steps that we follow in the statistical analysis. Then after this tabulation, you have put up the things into the Excel or into the SPSS sheet. You can make the categories. You have to define everything. You have to understand everything about each and every variable. Then the second thing we try to understand is what type of center tendency and dispersion is there in the data, along with the normality, to along with the graphical representation, whether what type of things are coming up in your data. So this is the second step, that we try to summarize the data in terms of what is the average value that, for example, you have the data for the job satisfaction variable. So the single value of average tells you the value in terms of what type of job satisfaction the sample of population sample that you have collected data from is showing you on job satisfaction. Similarly, what is the variety of job satisfaction is there? You can try to understand with the help of the dispersion, that is either the standard deviation or the your range, or you can take up the mean deviation, like that. Similarly, the graphical representation help you to understand the values of skewness and the kurtosis. And moreover, when we talk about the normality, in even in the SPSS also, you will be altering onto the normality phenomena because it is always suggested that when we go beyond 500, these SPSS also don't give the correct representations of the normality. And therein, the graphical representation is very useful in order to understand whether your data is coming up normal or not. This is so graphically, if your data is giving up the distribution coming up into symmetry, so then you can simply say that your data is approximately normal, because normality in totality cannot be possible in any of the data in human situations. So approximate normal is you will be able to understand with the help of graphical representation, but you can also along with that can calculate that whether your skewness or z skewness or z kurtosis is there or not. You can divide your skewness value from the standard error of skewness. Similarly, you can divide your kurtosis value with the standard error of kurtosis, and you can check it whether they are below the value of 1.96 or not. If they are below the value of 1.96, you can easily claim that your data is normal. So the calculation wise, you can use this formula, and graphically you can see the symmetry of your distribution in order to make out whether your data is normal or not. So that is the summarizing is the second stage, which help us to make out the identify the what is the average of the population, what is the variation in the population, whether that distribution is following the population or not. So those kind of things we come across at the second stage of statistical analysis. And the third stage is the application of the analytical methods. Now, these analytical methods is dependent upon what type of analysis we want to make, whether it is a relationship study or whether it is a predictive study or whether it is a study of differences. We are able to understand with the help of at the third stage we will be trying to identify with respect to this thing that the which type of analysis we want to make. So generally there are 5 types of analysis that we try to apply in. So first and foremost is descriptive analysis. Descriptive analysis is where in the most of the sociological researches or the social science researches, the descriptive analysis is the foremost phenomena is that we used in order to describe the things. How much is the preferences for one type of phenomena, what type of existence of the with the help of the frequencies, the what type of percentage of people have agreed to the question. So that kind of things are descriptive analysis, and this is the most frequently used phenomena in the statistics in the sociological or the social sciences researches. But beyond that, we go with the inferential analysis, wherein we are trying to use the sample to conclude about the population. That is the second type of analysis we do in your PhD researches. We find these terms in terms of making it that this is the part we have described, this is the part we have drawn inferences from. The third type of analysis, or the word that we use in terms of analysis, is the differential analysis, where we are trying to compare the groups or the on some variable, and those groups are compared on the basis of some responses on the basis of their means, and those averages are compared which group is having more of that variable, more of that construct. Then we will be able to conclude on the basis of that whether if the differences come significant, we will be able to conclude on the basis of that. Then we have the associative analysis that we are going to make out the generally in terms of one or more variables or two or more variables that we try to find out with the help of the in terms of chi-square analysis, because either we are taking up the if we have categorical data, then we will be using the chi-square independence test in order to find out the relationship between variables. But if we have the ratio, you will be able to use the Carl Pearson correlation analysis if it follows the normality procedure, and if it does not follows the normality procedure, we will be following the Spearman rank order correlation for in order to make the relationship between the variables. Then we have the last type of analysis, that is the predictive analysis. Now, predictive analysis is used when we try to go beyond the relationships. When we find more often very strong relationship between variables, we try to make that further into the phenomena that how much in situations one variable is going to predict the another variable. So in those kind of situations, we try to apply the predictive analysis. So this is used with the help of the factorial analysis, with the help of the regression analysis. We try to use this because this all, when we go beyond the regression analysis, it is all dependent upon the relationships, because everything in universe is there, that is we try to understand either in terms of differences or in terms of relationships. So herein also we are going beyond into the relationships. We go with prediction. From predictions we use the factor analysis, the cluster analysis, the discriminant analysis, the path analysis. All these are based on the relationships only, where we are trying to see the coefficient values, that how much stronger value is there, and try to make out, because if there is going to be very, very strong correlations, only then we can move forward to these higher order analysis techniques. Otherwise, we will not be able to use that. Then the data. Now, every time when we use the data, we have two parameters to make, because when we go into interpretation, we try to make this data into understanding. Because every theory that we start with, because every new concept, every new variable that comes into the human understanding has always started with the assumption. Now that assumption is based on some kind of relationships between different behaviors, between unique facts, and those facts make out some kind of theory. And when that theory is being, or that some behavior is coming up, now that behavior is understood and is denoted to its minimum level. And that minimum level description of the behavior help us to frame the items, which you might have learned in the beginning of the questionnaire, that each and every behavior related to one particular concept that we are able to make in a statement is the one important thing. Now, and those grounded theories are going to be come up in the form of statements, and we try to again put up that into the situation with the help of the data collection, and we try to again reaffirm what we started with the assumption as a theory. We started to verify that, and slowly that verification and further verification of the information and the data is going to make up a concept understood in the human understanding, and also it is being then applied for different situations. So it is always, whenever we try to do the statistical analysis, we have to understand two these important things, that we must be able to have the proper statistical model. If we are using the exactness to the higher order, then we are able to create some kind of good knowledge. Similarly, the decision making, more improvement in the decision making, the more it leads to the creation of the knowledge. So this is a continuum that is going to be there, that any that data we collect, now that data is going to give us some kind of information. Now that when we churn out the data, information is extracted. When that information is again found to be coming up again and again, that information becomes a fact. And when that fact is coming up, similarly from continuous studies, it becomes a knowledge. Now that knowledge takes the shape of the theory as an empirical theory, which has come up, started from the assumptions, and has now become our knowledge. So every new variable, every new construct that we understand is making up, and this is the phenomena that is going on to describe each and every variable that is coming up in our day-to-day life. So talking about the data, the parametric data and the non-parametric data, though I had already explained that the parametric data comes from the things wherein the sample is following the normality proposition of the population. It is totally following the population. So then we are going to apply the parametric statistics on the, and we henceforth call that as parametric data. And you can simply say that sample is overlapping the population of the population data. Then if we are not able to get a data from the population which is uh, following its totally or overlapping it totally, he says that these are the distribution free samples. And when they are distribution free samples, we are also free that there cannot be any conclusions drawn for the population. We are only going to make the conclusions for that particular data only. They cannot be generalized. So there we try to apply for the non-parametric data. Further, one of the few concepts that we try to understand is in our day-to-day life is that what my variable is. Now, is this variable is a categorical or is this a numerical? So whenever we are going to have a qualitative data, we are going to make out in terms of that is going to make up a categorical data. And when we are going to make some kind of analysis in terms of that there is a numbers coming across and those numbers are making some sense, so then it will be becoming the numerical data. Then the numerical data always again take the shape of whether it is a discrete or a continuous. Whether it is a single value, there is a no continuum in the scores, or there is a continuity in the scores. So therein you have the discrete or the continuous. But when we use the analysis, we try to understand it in terms of the scale variable as the continuous variable and the categorical variable as the nominal variable. The another two variables that has the measurement is the ordinal and the interval variables. So I'm going to understand more than in the analysis part that which statistical technique we use. Before try to understand that whenever we are trying to make some kind of research, either it is descriptive or it is the explanatory. So therein we are going along with some kind of variables which are considered as independent, dependent, and the extraneous. The independent, those who are going to make the impact. The dependent, those who are measured for seeing whether there is effect or not, and there are extraneous variables which are somehow making some kind of impact onto the research or the treatment, that there is some kind of manipulation or some kind of more. So in order to understand that what type of research we are doing, we can go with some simple understanding that what type of research we are making in. You have to understand whether your data is numerical or narrative. This is the first question you have to ask yourself. Is my data is numerical or it is a narrative? There is a verbal connotation to that. So if it is numerical, then what I have done, whether I have done a cause-effect relationship, is there any kind of cause-effect relationship is there? Now there are different aspects are there. Now if there is a cause and relationship, whether that is independent variable manipulated or not. Now if the independent variable is manipulated, then you have a different kind of research that becomes the experimental research. If your independent variable is not manipulated, you are making the causal comparative research, or what we in other words we call as ex post facto research. Then similarly, if your cause effect relationship is not there, you are just trying to make the relationship, or you are making the prediction. If there is a relationship, then you are doing the correlational research. If you are not doing the correlation relationship or prediction, you are doing the descriptive research. So this is again the way of understanding that what type of research I am doing, and so depending upon that, what type of things that I will be able to make out. See, because when we write on the methodology part, we try to understand that what type of research I am doing and how that research has come up. Now, then another type is the narrative part. If you have the verbal data, now whether that verbal data is related to the past events or the current events. Now, whether that is related to the past events or the current events. So if that is related to the past events, it is the historical research. And if it is related to the current research, then it becomes the qualitative research. So this is the way of understanding that what type of different researches are there in most of the simplifying material that we do in our day-to-day life. You are able to understand the research in very simple way. Now, the scales of measurement. What are the different scales of measurements? Because unless until you are able to have the understanding of this thing, that what are the different scales of measurement? So you have the primary scales of measurement. You have the secondary, primary scales of measurements, and how those scales of measurements are being used in your analysis. Now, first and foremost is the nominal scale. Now, nominal scale is automatically, when we have started, we have talked about just previously that there is a categorical data and there is not a categorical numerical data. Now, categorical data is the data wherein we are going to use the nominal approach or the nominal variable. Now, we have to define the variable as nominal, and we are making up that these categories are possible for that particular variable. For example, gender. Now, gender is a nominal variable, and that variable is helping us to understand that there is male and female, there is a urban and rural, there is a high income group and low income group. So these type, there is a categorization is very clear. Now that is the nominal scale of measurement. The second type is that there are categories, but there is ranking, and you are able to rank the people or rank the things on the basis of some parameter, but there is no fixed. If there is one judge that is making up the rating in some different way and the another one is making in a different way, so, and that is not, you can say, is permanent. This is temporary ranking. So that type of ranking is called as the ordinal. For example, low job satisfaction, high job satisfaction. Because I ask that somebody as that, are you satisfied with the job? He says yes. And when I asked him to fill the form on job satisfaction, so he scored 8 out of 10. So at 8 out of 10, he is feeling himself as low job satisfied. The another person also that he is highly satisfied, but he again rank himself or get the score 8.5 out of 10. So therein how you are able to make. So that is the type wherein there is no permanent kind of categorization available. So that kind of categorization takes the shape of the ordinal thing. Then we have the interval type of measurement. Now, this type of measurement is the measurement when we are going to have the situation where you cannot have the zero. You are able to rate the things, you are able to have the score on the things because those things are trying to make up that you are having that much of the things, but no existence of that particular variable is not there. For example, you can say that achievement or the performance of how much marks you have got, you can say zero. But how much love you have for one person, there is no, or if you say that no love, even then you cannot be very certain, yes, there is no love. If you say that there is no anxiety, there is can never be said to be that if there is no anxiety. You can say that there is zero temperature. No, you cannot say zero temperature because there is somehow of heat is there in the environment. So it is this type of variables where we are, there is no existence of the things, that non-existence of the absence of the thing, wherein we are having the interval type of data. And then the last one is the ratio type of data. In most of the times we are taking this into consideration. Wherever there is a zero is possible, that type of measurement is taking the ratio type of data. Now, taking things little to the SPSS application, we make the things that whenever we are having the interval and the ratio type of data, we take both of them as the skill variables. The whether you are measuring the anxiety, whether you are measuring temperature, or you are measuring the academic marks of the individual, you are taking them into in terms of the scale variable. Similarly, there is the ordinal in human measurements. Most of the time, we have the items responses coming up in the ordinal form. But when we take them into consideration as a score of each dimension or the total score of the construct, we take them as again as a scale variable. So this is the sum of the, but still there is on the ordinal type of measurements, there is a more researches are going on, and we are trying to analyze the results on ordinal pattern only or ordinal variable only. That is still in the developmental stages in the statistics, but yes, there are some analysis are being made on the ordinal aspects, but most of the time we use the variables as the ratio variables in them. And the another understanding is the nominal variable that we make in order to make the analysis. Now, how these scales of measurement help us to identify the analysis technique. Now, when we make the analysis technique of nominal, the nominal technique is when we are having the two nominal variables. Your first variable is nominal, your second variable is normal. So, in that kind of situation, how you are able to make the interpretation or the make the analysis technique type of a variable. Now, in this type of characteristic, when you have a categorical variable, you can make only the percentages as or the frequencies as the medium to explain the things. You can use the mode as a measure in order to see that what is the maximum occurring phenomena. So in those kind of situations, the when you have the variable as nominal, the percentages, frequencies, or the mode are the descriptive measures, or you can define or you can describe your data with the help of this. Then, if you want to make the analysis on the basis of nominal data, then you can have the chi-square analysis in being used. If you have two nominal variables, so you can check their independence with the help of chi-square analysis. But if you have a single variable, you can check whether the distribution is same or not, whether the assumption is significant differences or no significant differences are achieved or not, whether it is equally distributed or not. So that is the you can do with the help of the chi-square analysis. The second type of variable, when you have the ordinal type of variable, and you can have single variable or two variables. In that type of situation where uh, we want to apply some kind of statistical technique, in those situations you can describe the data with the help of the percentile, and you can explain your data with the help of the median. Now, the preferences in the ranking or the market position of a company or the social class of an individual, that in these type of situations we are going to only explain that what is the median value coming up for the data. Similarly, we may able to see that what is the percentile value with which that thing is coming up in the data, whether coming up 10th decile or it is coming up 50th percentile or it is coming up 75th percentile. So you can describe it with, when I say percentile, you can describe it also in terms of deciles, you can use it quartiles, you can use them also. And if you have a ordinal data that is coming up in ranking form, so in those rankings, if you want to infer something, you want to analyze the data, so you can use the rank order correlation for finding out the relationship between the variables. And if you have the want to see the differences between the groups of individuals for that particular variable, then you can use the Friedman ANOVA for that. Similarly, we have the third type of measurement, that is the interval measurement. Now that interval measurement is again, as I had earlier said, the scale variables are being considered for interval and the ratio. But if you have any kind of interval or ratio data, you can go along with any kind of variables. You can use with the range, mean, standard deviation, because ratio data is more of science being used in the scientific discipline. So there you may use the geometric mean, harmonic mean for description, and also the coefficient of variation to find out the inferences out of that. But the most of the human data which does not have the zero value except the performance level, academic performance like that, the in most of the time you can use any of the descriptive statistics like range, mean, standard deviation, and like that, and you can use the inferences, inferential techniques like product movement correlation. You can use the t-test, you can use the ANOVA, you can use the regression analysis like that. So those can be used in the primary scales of measurement. So this is helping us to make out whether our analysis technique is going correctly or not, whether our the things that we want to explain, whether we want to make all the answers of the research question, to understanding the content of the nature of the variable will help us that what analysis technique I can apply for my research. Going further, the interpretation. Now, when we have come up with any kind of variable, any kind of understanding of the research, the after the analysis, either you have applied it for the. I take the example of the relationship. For example, I take the two variables that there is a relationship between. I try to have an objective that to find the relationship between job satisfaction and teaching competence of the teachers. Now, in this situation, job satisfaction and the teaching competence, the individual is trying to make the find out the relationship. Now, suppose the relationship value between these two variables is coming up as positive. That more the individual is satisfied, and more he is going to, or he is also going to be competent in teaching. If he is not satisfied, so he is not going to be very competent in the teaching. Now, in this kind of analysis, that positive relationship has come up, and how you are going to interpret this thing. The value has come up that as 0.40 for the correlation, and the relationship 0.40 is positive only. So we are able to make out that this is a positive relationship between these two values. One aspect. The another aspect is that how much strong relationship is there. That 0.40 value is coming up into the medium kind of average kind of correlation. So you cannot say that a very strong relationship is there between the job satisfaction and the teaching competence, but you can definitely say that there is a positive relationship and there is a average relationship between the job satisfaction and the teaching competence being found among the teachers of the education colleges. But if we want to interpret you have rejected the null hypothesis that there is no significant relationship between the job satisfaction and the teaching competence among teachers, but you have rejected the null hypothesis. But how you are going to interpret? One aspect is of interpretation is that there is a very average positive relationship between the job satisfaction and the teaching competence of teachers. Now, this is the conclusion that you are coming in, but how this conclusion is there with respect to the interpretation, whether your research is going to have some kind of findings or review of related literature that you have done before doing your this analysis, whether that thing you have found out that how many researchers have contributed that the relationship between job satisfaction and the teaching competence is coming up as a positive relationship, or it is coming as negative relationships, or somebody has reported no relationship. So you have to first think, you have to ascertain in your interpretation whether this finding that you have found is in continuity with the previous finding or not. This is the first and foremost task of the interpretation. You have to find out that whether this is a continuity in findings, is there is a line of direction coming up or not. This is the one major task of the interpretation. So you have to find out which reviews support your findings and which reviews are not supporting your findings. Now, this is the, if there is a supportive findings, there is a continuity in supporting findings, like similar findings are coming in. So you can simply say that the finding is are being supported by different researchers. But if there is a contradiction in the research, what type of there is, some have reported the positive uh, relationship and some have reported the negative relationships. So then how you are going to make the conclusions? So therein your task is becomes little more extensive, that you have to explain that what reasons that your in your study that you are able to get the finding that is being supported by the previous researchers, or what type of population. So here in this type of situation, you have to find out what are the different type of things that are coming up in the in your research that is not making the making the interpretation going into the similar line. So you have to see out if there is some kind of errors in the data, if there is a sample differences are there. So if those things are going to be there, then we will be able to make out, okay, yes, on the basis of these sample descriptions or on the basis of these factors in the sample, the findings are coming in like this. The another important task of the interpretation is the establishment of the explanation of the concepts. Now that is again in the qualitative researches, when we are going to, or even in the quantitative researches, the factors or the sub factors of the construct, they are being helpful, or the gender, the demographic information that you extract from the sample. Now that also help us to explain the concept in a beautiful way, that how the things are going to move up into the direction, or how this phenomena that you are describing in your objective or in your hypothesis, that how that has come up into this thing. So that establishment of explanation of the concepts is the second and the foremost thing in this situation, that you have to explain the concept and try to identify the factors that are going to make up the explanation of the underlying phenomena. So this is the going to be the interpretation. Two things that you have to do. That one is you have to explain the thing into a greater detail, that why that thing is there. You have to take the definition of the construct into consideration. You have to take into consideration the factors that are leading to that kind of conclusions coming up. So then you will be able to make the better interpretation. Again, what you need to think, what you need to make out in terms of making a correct interpretation of your research, that you will be able to make out on the basis of the things that if you will be able to take up into this consideration, that you must be able to make out that before analyzing into some kind of the analysis or inferences, the first and foremost thing is that you have to always check your data. I have found most of the time that the researcher is just taking the data collection instrument in his hand without reading it, without going through it, without himself firstly filling that form, without understanding the statements they are going into that. So the first and foremost thing that a researcher must do is reading each and every item of the data collection instrument, and try to find out whether the putting in some kind of items which are not related to your research construct is also one of the good practices, that which can help you to find out whether the data that has been filled by the individual is correct or not. Some bogus items you can include, for which the answers is not going to be on similar lines as it is going to be coming up for other items in most of the situations. So in those, checking out from just those 2-3 items, those the fake items in your questionnaire will help you to identify the respondents, those who have filled in the information with full honesty. If you are able to find out those persons, those who have not been able, they are filling the information appropriately, because it is the one of the most errors that are there in the data, that researcher is honest in his collection, but the respondent is not honest in his responses. So when we have to find out the respondent, those who have not filled in the data correctly, so that is the first and foremost the thing that the researcher must satisfy himself that the data that is coming up to him from the respondent is appropriate, and he can trust the data and for making up the inferences for his research. Then second thing is that on all most of the when we are trying to generalize the population, when we are going to generalize the findings for the population, the we must see that the data is following good homogeneity for the population. Your data is coming up homogeneous. And the third thing is that the application of the analysis technique must be following all the assumptions of the application of that particular statistical technique. So if you will be going through this procedure, the results will be coming up correctly, and the results are going to be explained and interpreted very well. If you are going to take these precautions, definitely the things is going to be coming up in a better way. And the last thing is that always be cautious about the errors, that you are going to give the interpretation without any biases. You are going to find out the logical explanations based on the construct definitions, based on the factors that have come up in the data. You are going to support your findings with the help of the data information that you have. So if you are going to make all these things into consideration, you are taking the things into consideration, that which statistical technique is going to be proper in order to make the analysis into the best possible format. And if you are going to interpret the data with respect to its continuity and with respect to its explanation, taking into consideration the things that are available in the data, you will be able to make a good research report as a whole. And with this, I conclude my session on data analysis and interpretation. Those who have any questions, they can please ask from me. So over to you, Jyotina, for the question answer session that we want to do.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for a wonderful and informative session. Now I would like to invite Dr. Kamardeep Tariwal for the formal vote of thanks. Over to you, sir.
Jyoti madam, question answer session will be
जी sir.
later. Question answer session.
जी sir.
Question answer session.
जी sir. जी sir. हाँ जी. If anyone have any query or any question, house is open for all. I think sir,
Professor Chetty explained very well, so I think there is no confusion at all.
sir,
I think so.
there is one question in chat box by Paramveer Singh. Difference between factor analysis and cluster analysis.
Yes. These are two techniques, two different techniques. That the factor analysis is basically when we are having the factors into consideration. There are two techniques for factor analysis that we are taking up into as exploratory factor analysis and confirmatory factor analysis. In most of the situations, that we are making up for making up the construction of the tools. In so the situations wherein we have the already defined parameters of a tool, and we have already defined items of the tool, therein we are going to apply the confirmatory factor analysis. But in some situations we try to make our own assumptions into clear, and that help us to make up into preparing some kind of questionnaire on a tool, on a construct. Therein we will be using the exploratory factor analysis. Now, when we use the exploratory factor analysis, we will be trying to make out that what factors are going to make uh, that construct. We are going to define the constructs on the basis of the factors. There is another technique, that is the cluster. Now, just like in the factor analysis, you have the factors that are going to describe a composite factor or the variable. The cluster analysis is helping us to find out what different clusters are making up that particular information. Now, it is a kind of a profiling, that you try to understand what sub factors are there into the situation in terms of populations. For example, you would say that motivation. Now, in terms of motivation, that there is the technique that you can either profile the persons on the basis of their achievement of motivation, or the profiling on the basis of what they are at different levels of their motivation, or the another is, that is the person oriented approach, the variable oriented approach. When we are trying to make up, and in order to make the profiling of different persons, we are trying to use the cluster analysis, so that help us to identify the clusters with similar kind of characteristics.
Thank you, sir. Sir, there is one more question by Mr. Jagtar, sir. What
Yes.
will be the suitability of ANOVA?
ANOVA is a very wide analytical technique. There is nothing kind of a suitability, because if I can take the lecture, so I can take even 1 hour to explain the ANOVA, because ANOVA starts with differential analysis to the experimental analysis. If I talk simply the differential analysis, so it is an extension to t-test. From if there is a one variable, you can go with the one-way ANOVA. If you have the two variables, two independent variables, then you can go with two-way ANOVA and making it a factorial analysis. But moving on to the another type of ANOVA, when we are having the experimental situations, from pre-test to post-test and different level of testing at different points of time, you can have one-way repeated measure ANOVA. Then you can have the situation wherein you are having the one independent variable, and which is the within variable, or which is the experimental type, that is treatment variable or time variable. The another is the between variable, that you have one experimental group and another the control group. Therein we will be applying the mixed ANOVA. Then there is the another kind of ANOVA, that is the one within variable and two within variables, which is making up the repeated measure ANOVA of factorial type. So there are different ANOVAs which make the suitability. I can make his suitability more clear with respect to his research he is doing, so I will be able to suggest better in that.
Thank you, sir. I think Paramveer sir
ma'am, please.
Yes, sir.
Professor Chechi, if a person is not very friendly and not expert in statistics, or he want to pursue his research with percentage, then is it acceptable, or it can be said that it is okay? Mean percentage.
So those who are not very well versed in the statistics, they can go with the qualitative research. And in qualitative research, they can go age analysis and the frequency analysis, and they can make the interpretation on the basis of the thematics, that themes that they are able to generate from the research. and sub themes, and from that they can make the categories and conclusions drawn on the basis of the frequencies and the percentage. So that's very much acceptable, but he must go with the qualitative researches if he's not very good at statistics. Otherwise, learning statistics is not very difficult. If somebody is willing to do, so he can be able to do the analysis, because in these times we have so many softwares which are very easy to use. It can be done.
And please explain very brief about the qualitative research in very brief, for a few minutes. Qualitative
Right.
research in languages and social sciences, because I interacted so many persons from Department of Languages and Social Sciences. They want to pursue their research. They want to write a research paper, but they are afraid with the statistical techniques. So please enlighten in a very brief manner, please.
For the languages, we can talk of in terms of discourse analysis. That is very much being used in terms of language literature. That they can go with the analysis of the literature that is coming up in the news with respect to one particular construct. So that is the generally being used. Even the narrative analysis is there. Then we can go with the observational studies. We can go with the case study approach. The qualitative research is very wide. We can go with the observations only. You can just go with the interviews only. So the approach they can go with, for English people or the language people, I would suggest with the discourse analysis of narrative analysis, is that very easy techniques. If they have very fond of reading, so they will be able to make out with respect to these techniques.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ji.
Thank you, sir. Now, for the formal vote of thanks, I would like to invite Dr. Kamardeep Tadwan, as an assistant professor in the Department of Biotechnology, SD College, Hoshiarpur. Over to you, sir.
Please unmute. Dr. Dr. Dhaliwal, please unmute.
Thank you very much, ma'am, Jyoti ma'am. Today's session was focusing on analysis of data and interpretation by Dr. Vijay Kumar Chechi, Professor and Head School of Education, LPU, Jalandhar. From the behalf of all the 6 constituent colleges of this FDP, I would like to extend a formal thanks to you for giving us an in-depth description of all the statistical methods, synthesis of analysis, and interpretations in this wonderful session. The methods you have actually told us about are very beneficial for all the participants of this FDP. On whether they're researchers, whether they're assistant professors who are going to teach this in their classrooms. This session was an incredibly informative session for all of us. Thank you very much, sir. This is on behalf of all the constituent colleges, GGDSD College, Haryana, Shri Guru Har Rai Sahib College for Women, Chappewal, Moga College of Education for Girls, Moga, Babeke College of Education, Dodhar, Moga, STS College of Education for Women, Lopo, and last but not least, SD College, Hoshiarpur. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chaudhary sir. Thank you for inviting this and giving this opportunity. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Now I request Mr. Paramveer, and we all stand for the national anthem.
Jai Hind.
Thank you.
Had a very busy schedule today, but he approved our request for noon session of all colleges and management and faculty members and organizers. Once again, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you to all the participants who joined us at 1:30 today. Thank you.